Hey guys, so today is election day in Peru. So I'm actually going to see Juan Jesus today, and I'm gonna go with him when he votes, and I might even go with his dad and his sister who vote in a different location. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit how elections are in Peru, and I'll be sharing some little fun facts about Peruvian elections along the way. And the first thing I'm gonna say is that everybody in Peru has to vote. It's called a multa. There's a fine if you don't vote. So everybody's going to be out voting today. They've expanded the hours because of COVID so that there's not a million people at the same time. But we're going to go to his neighborhood and show you a little bit about Peruvian elections.
In the weeks before an election, there's a lot of different ways that they will promote their candidates. So this is one of them. This is a caravan where they'll drive through with lots of cars with music, sometimes dancing, to promote their candidate. Here I was on the train on my way to Juan Jesus's neighborhood, and you can see some different billboards promoting different candidates. Technically, they're supposed to take all of these down the week before the election. This video was the day of the election, so all of that should have been taken down, but sometimes they don't want to be bothered with taking down their propaganda. They don't want to hire somebody to go out and do it for them, so they just leave it there. Those two that I'm pointing to are actually from last year's elections for Congress, so sometimes they just end up staying up, and what happens is if the candidates don't pay for somebody to come and bring them down, then the city has to go out and take them all down, and the city ends up doing the job that should be the candidate's job of taking everything down. So here you can see some propaganda that should be gone, but it's still there. So later that day we arrived at Juan Jesus's polling location. There's some information on the outside about the candidates who are up for voting and also who needs to vote at that location. There were police checking IDs on the way in to make sure you're in the right place and show you where to go on the inside. There was a lot of police and soldiers keeping watch outside too, making sure everyone was following the COVID restrictions for voting. This is inside the school. As you can see, there's not that many people there voting at the time that he went. So that was nice because some places had really long lines of people waiting and waiting. You'll also see here in a second that there's some soldiers standing guard just to make sure, like I said, everything's going well, everything is staying under control. So next we have where Juan Jesus went to, actually the room where he went to vote, and there on the door you can see there's the number of the room and then a list of people who are voting in that room. You can also see there the miembros de mesa, the people who are kind of watching, making sure the voting is going well and going smoothly. Here's the ballot that they vote with. There were, I think, between 18 and 21 candidates for president, which is definitely different from the States. And then they also voted for Congress and also for Parliament. Everything is on paper. So you fill out who you want to vote for, you sign it, and then toss it in a box. There's no digital form of voting in Peru. Okay, so typically voting places in Peru are schools or universities, and they're usually state-run universities or schools. But this year, because of COVID, they opened up a lot of new locations. So that last clip and this clip are both examples of schools where people can go and vote. But as you're going to see in a minute, they also opened up stadiums, they opened up theaters and parks, and even locations just in the street where people could go and vote this year. This is the national soccer stadium where some people voted this year. So that was kind of interesting. That's never happened before. Here's a park that they opened up for voting. You can see these white tents. Each white tent is a table, and at each table there are 3 members of the table to help regulate voting and make sure everybody is voting without fraud and just to kind of supervise everything. So what happened, and this is usually a problem, but even worse this year because of COVID, some of the members of the table did not show up, and they cannot open a table for voting until all 3 members show up to run the table, which means that people who would usually come in and vote, they have to wait outside in the line until everybody shows up to run the tables. So as you can see here, there were like really, really long lines in the streets of people waiting for hours, literally hours, to get in and vote because no one was showing up to do the members of the table like they were required to. This is a little ad on the news just basically saying, are you young? Can you be a member of the table? The democracy needs you. So they were calling on people, sometimes picking people out of the lines to come in and volunteer and do it because the people who were required were not showing up that day. So as I mentioned before, voting in Peruvian elections is required. This is a little clip of the news sharing how people who are outside of Peru were voting, Peruvian citizens were voting. Like this clip is in the United States, in New York, people are lining up to vote. Peruvians are voting from other countries. So even if you're not in Peru, you still have to go vote, and there's no such thing as mail-in ballots. So you have to go usually to an embassy or like a school. They'll set up a location where Peruvian citizens can go and vote, even though they're not in their country on election day. So no mail-in ballots for Peru. So when the day of voting is over, everybody's going back home, everybody's turning on the TV, and they're waiting for this clip right here, which is called the flash. So when the last minute of voting is over and the voting places are closed, they will show the flash, which shows the results of not the votes, not the actual count of votes, but the count of surveys done throughout the day, to kind of give Peruvians an idea of this is probably who's going to come out on top. So as you can see here, the first guy has 16% of the votes. So what happens in Peru is because they have so many candidates, they do this first round of voting, and then usually there's a second round. The first person has to actually receive 51% of the votes to actually win the first round, which doesn't happen a lot. So now what's going to happen is in June they're going to have a second round of voting, and the top 2 candidates are going to run against each other again, and they have to have that 51% in order to win the election. So we're going to have a second round, and we actually have the official votes now, and it looks like that first guy, Pedro Castillo, with the little pencil, and the third lady there with the K, Keiko Fujimori, those 2 are going to run against each other in the second round.
Hey guys, so I just wanted to give some concluding details. Like I said, there will be a second round here in June between the 2 top candidates, which was Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori. I want to tell you a little bit about them. So Pedro Castillo is very much leftist, very liberal. He wants to legalize abortion in Peru. He wants to change the constitution. He's basically aligned himself with the socialism in Venezuela and other countries like Cuba. On the other side of the ballot will be Keiko Fujimori. She is more on the conservative side, more on the right side, but there is a lot of corruption, not just with her, but also in her past. Her father is a former president, and if I understand correctly, he's still in jail for corruption. She's also been in jail for corruption. Like the states, they wait to install their new president, and they'll wait until July when they have their Independence Day. And this year, Peru is celebrating 200 years of independence. So just pray for Peru in this election. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. Subscribe if you want to see more about Peru. I'm planning some new videos coming up here soon to show you some more of Peru, and so you can see like the experience here. And leave a comment if you still have questions, or maybe you know something about Peru that I didn't mention, and leave that in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.